Hello and good day everyone. For today, we will discuss inverse trigonometric functions. First, let's recall some important concepts on inverse functions. First one is this property pertaining to the domain and range of a function and its inverse. Basically, this is telling us that the domain and range of the function and inverse just interchange with each other. So you have domain of f equals range of f inverse, and range of f equals domain of f inverse. Second one, this is inherent from the name itself, inverse functions. So basically, these two revert each other's effects. First one, f inverse, circle f. So if you will recall, this circle here means composition of functions. So f of x equals x for x in the domain of f, and f of f inverse of x equals x for x in the domain of f inverse. But using this one, we know that domain of f inverse equals the range of f. So for you to revert the effects of f and f inverse, you just have to make sure that x is defined in the inner function. Third one, graph of f inverse is the graph of f reflected upon y equals x. So now what we want to do is to introduce some sort of an inversion for your trigonometric functions. But first, we have a really big problem. Trigonometric functions are not one-to-one. And if you will recall, for you to have an inverse, your function needs to be one-to-one. So why are trigonometric functions not one-to-one? Let's look at a basic case, which is the sine function. So your sine function has this graph right here. Oops. It goes like this. And then this side it goes like this as well. Okay. Yeah. Like this. Why is this not one-to-one? For example, if we will look at y equals 0, you have multiple corresponding points here. So it's not the case that every y value corresponds to exactly one x value only. In this case, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x values corresponding to y equals 0. So your sine function is not one-to-one. However, how can we introduce some sort of an inversion? Basically, what they did is they restricted the domain of your sine function. So for example, for this one, they took this part right here from x equals negative pi over 2 to x equals pi over 2. So this pink line right here, let's call it the restricted sine function. The restricted sine function. Why did they choose this part right here? They chose this segment since we are able to collect all y values. So we are able to collect all y values. And in this part, each y value correspond to exactly one x value. So by taking this restricted sine function right here, you're able to obtain the inverse by reflecting this one upon y equals x. And so, we have our 6 inverse trigonometric functions: sine inverse, cosine inverse, tangent inverse, cotangent inverse, secant inverse, and cosecant inverse. So take note, this raised to negative 1 here doesn't mean that we're taking the reciprocal of the trigonometric function. This just means that you are taking the inverse. So this one right here is not equal to 1 over sine of x. Okay? You have to take note of this one right here. First, for sine and cosine inverse, their domain is the closed interval, -1 to 1. So if you will recall, the domain of the inverse function is the range. And the range of your sine and cosine inverse is -1 to 1. So you have this one right here. For tangent inverse and cotangent inverse, your domain is R. And for secant inverse and cosecant inverse, the domain is -infinity to -1, including -1, union +1 to positive infinity. As for the range, this one would correspond to the domain of the restricted trigonometric function. So in the case of your sine function, we considered x equals -pi/2 to x equals pi/2. That's why you have this one right here. For cosine inverse, they chose 0 to pi, including the endpoints. For tangent and cotangent, they chose the one that is quite similar to sine inverse and cosine inverse. The difference is they did not include the endpoints. Since if you will include the endpoints, you will obtain an undefined expression. For secant inverse, you have 0 to pi/2, not including pi/2, union pi to 3 pi/2, not including 3 pi/2. Then for cosecant inverse, you have -pi to -pi/2. This one should be negative. You are not including -pi here. Union 0 to pi/2. Again, not including 0. And for the quadrants that we are considering for your inverse trigonometric functions, for sine and tangent, we are considering quadrants 1 and 4. For cosine and cotangent, we are considering quadrants 1 and 2. Then for secant and cosecant inverse, we are considering quadrants 1 and 3. Some notations lang. The inverse trigonometric functions can also be written in this manner. So for sine inverse, you can write that as arcsine. Then you have arccos, arctan, arcsec, arccot rather, arccot, arcsec, and arccosecant. Okay? So if you see this functions right here, it's just the same as this one right here. So let's have some examples. Examples. So what we will just do today is evaluate expressions involving inverse trigonometric functions. So let's evaluate the following. First one, let's consider cosine inverse of square root of 2 over 2. So how do we evaluate inverse trigonometric functions? One good method that you can do here is equate this to a certain variable, then apply this property right here involving inverse functions. So if you have f inverse of x, you can apply f to both sides. And finally, you'll get the one inside, provided that x right here is inside the domain of f inverse. So let's try this example. First and foremost, let's check if square root of 2 over 2 is inside the domain of cosine inverse. So is square root of 2 inside the domain of cosine inverse? Take note the domain of cosine inverse is negative 1 to 1. And square root of 2 over 2, this one is just the same as square root of 2 over square root of 4, which is square root of 2 over 4. And clearly, this one is less than 1. So you have square root of 2 over 2 here, which is definitely inside the domain of cosine inverse. So now, what we can do is let's say alpha to be equal to cosine inverse of square root of 2 over 2. Then from here, we can apply the cosine function to both sides. So applying the cos function, we get here cosine of alpha equals cosine of cosine inverse of square root of 2 over 2. And this one right here, since square root of 2 over 2 is inside the domain of cosine inverse, these two sort of cancels, or in short, they revert the effect of each other. So you get here cosine alpha being equal to square root of 2 only. And when does this happen? When does cosine alpha become equal to square root of 2 over 2? Take note, this alpha right here is a cosine value. So we have to make sure that alpha is inside the domain of cos. But this time, the cos that we are considering is the restricted one. And the domain of your cosine here should be the range of your cosine inverse. So basically, we have to make sure that we are choosing an alpha value inside the range, which is 0 to pi. So we are choosing alpha in the range of cosine inverse, which is equal to 0 to pi. And in 0 pi, when does this one happen? This happens precisely if alpha equals pi over 4. So if you will recall, cosine of pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2. And since your alpha is defined as cosine inverse of square root of 2 over 2, we have that cosine inverse of square root of 2 over 2 equals pi over 4. So let's have another example. For the second one, let's look for sine inverse of 1. So same technique. First, check if this one is inside the domain of sine inverse. So the domain of sine inverse is negative 1 to 1. And clearly 1 is inside this interval, since as you can see here, we are including 1. So we know that 1 is in the domain of sine inverse, and so we can let alpha to be equal to sine inverse of 1. And from here, we can apply the sine function to both sides to get sine alpha equals sine of sine inverse of 1. And since 1 is in the domain of sine inverse, this one right here is just equal to 1. So you have the equation sine alpha equals 1. And to find the alpha value, we are choosing we are choosing alpha to be inside the range of sine inverse. And what's the range of sine inverse? The range of sine inverse is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. And when does this happen? Within this interval, this equation holds true precisely if, so in negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, the equation holds if alpha equals pi over 2. So that means sine inverse of 1 equals pi over 2. So as you can see, we have a general method, no? It's quite simple. First, make sure that the one inside is inside the domain of this function. Then after that, you can let this value to be some certain variable. Then from here, you can apply the original function to both sides to get a trigonometric equation. And now you're simply solving this trigonometric equation within the range of your inverse trigonometric function. Okay? So let's proceed with, I guess, 2 more examples. Let's try for number 3. Arc cot of square root of 3. So again, when we say arc cot, this is just the same as cotangent inverse. So first and foremost, let's check if square root of 3 is inside the domain of arc cot. And the domain of arc cot or your cotangent inverse is the set of all real numbers. So square root of 3 is inside the domain of cotangent inverse, or domain of arc cot rather. Domain of arc cot. So that means we can proceed to our solving. You just let alpha to be equal to arc cot of square root of 3. Then applying the cotangent function, you get here cotangent alpha equals, so cotangent of arc cot of square root of 3, that just gives you square root of 3. And so we are left with solving this equation for alpha. So we are choosing alpha to be in the range of cotangent inverse. And what's the range of cotangent inverse? The range of cotangent inverse is 0 to pi. So now, when the cotangent alpha become equal to square root of 3, this one happens. So in 0 to pi, this happens precisely if your alpha equals pi over 6. And so we have arc cot of square root of 3 equals pi over 6. So once again, just like what I said in our previous discussion, you really have to remember your special values. But in case that you are not familiar with it anymore, you can look at the given radical. So here you have square root of 3. So that means you are considering these 2 points right here, square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2, and 1/2, comma square root of 3 over 2. And taking note that this one corresponds to sine alpha and cosine alpha, and this point corresponds to the angle pi over 6, and this one corresponds to pi over 3, we can run our trial and error. So take note, cotangent alpha is cosine alpha over sine alpha. So what you just do is test these values right here, and you will see that square root of 3 is just the same as square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1 over 2. So that's your square root of 3 over 2 times 2 over 1. You precisely get square root of 3. And so your corresponding angle is this one right here, pi over 6. But if you are really familiar with your special values, then that's good. This one should be quite easy for you already. Okay? Next example, let's consider cosecant inverse of 1. Cosecant inverse of 1. First, let's check if cosecant inverse, if 1 is in the domain of cosecant inverse. So cosecant inverse has domain negative infinity to negative 1, union 1 to positive infinity. And as we can see, 1 is included. So 1 is in the domain of cosecant inverse. And that means we can proceed to our method of letting this one right here to become some variable, say alpha, and applying the cosecant function to both sides. We get cosecant alpha equals cosecant of cosecant inverse of 1. That will just give you 1. And when does this happen? Take note, cosecant of alpha is just the same as 1 over sine alpha. So you have here 1 over sine alpha equals 1. And this is just equivalent to saying that sine alpha equals 1. So how do we solve for this one? Once again, we take note of the range of your cosecant inverse. So the range of your cosecant inverse is this one right here. So we are choosing alpha to be in the range of sine inverse, which is negative pi to negative pi over 2, union 0 to pi over 2. And within this interval, we only obtain one value, which is alpha equals pi over 2. So therefore, we have cosecant inverse of 1 equals pi over 2. Okay? For the next set of examples, this time we will be dealing with compositions of inverse trigonometric functions and your regular trigonometric functions. So let's look at the following examples. First one, let's call this number 5. Let's look at tangent inverse of negative 5. So take note, since this is the inverse of each other, it might be tempting to say that this one right here is already equal to the number inside. However, we have to make sure first that this number right here is inside the domain of tangent inverse. So is negative 5 inside the domain of tangent inverse? Recall that the domain of tangent inverse is the set of all real numbers. And clearly, negative 5 is a real number. So negative 5 is in the domain of tangent inverse. And so the effects of tangent and tangent inverse just cancels out with each other. And so we get tangent of tangent inverse of negative 5 equals negative 5. Another example, let's look at sine inverse of sine of 5 pi over 3. This time right here, the one that's inside is the sine function. So what we want to make sure is that 5 pi over 3 is inside the domain of your restricted sine function, which is the range of sine inverse. So we want to make sure that 5 pi over 3 is in the range of sine inverse. And the range of sine inverse is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. And clearly 5 pi over 3 is not inside this interval. So let's take note of that. 5 pi over 3 is not in the range of sine inverse. However, what do we know? We know that your sine function is 2 pi periodic. So that means if we adjust the number inside here by multiples of 2 pi, the value of sine of this one will not be affected. So what can we do? Take note that 5 pi over 3 is greater than pi over 2. So to make sure that we get a number which is less than pi over 2, we can subtract 2 pi to 5 pi over 3. So 5 pi over 3 minus 2 pi, we get here negative pi over 3. And negative pi over 3, this one clearly is inside negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. And so that means we can apply the properties on inverse function first by writing sine inverse of sine of 5 pi over 3 as sine inverse of sine of, this time we're considering negative pi over 3. And since this one is in the range of sine inverse, we can just revert the effects of sine and sine inverse to get negative pi over 3. So is this clear? So if the one inside, the function inside is your regular trigonometric function, you can invoke the periodicity of your trigonometric functions. However, the same cannot be said if we have functions of this kind where the inverse is inside. Since for inverse we have no concept of periodicity. So there's no concept of periodicity for inverse functions. Okay? So let's have one last example for questions of this kind. Let's consider the cosine of cosine inverse of pi. First, we have to check if pi is inside the domain of cosine inverse. So domain of cosine inverse is negative 1 to 1, and clearly pi is not inside that one. Pi is not inside that one. Why? Pi is greater than 1. So we have here that pi is not inside the domain of cosine inverse. And since there is no concept of periodicity in cosine inverse, we cannot really do anything about this one anymore. So our conclusion is that the cosine of cosine inverse of pi is not defined. So why is it not defined? Simply because pi is not inside the domain of your cosine inverse. So for these kinds of questions, you really have to be careful. If the function inside is the inverse, you have to make sure that this number right here is inside the domain of this one. But if the one inside is a regular trigonometric function, you have to make sure first that this number right here is in the range of sine inverse. And if not, you can invoke the periodicity of your sine function, or in general, your trigonometric function. Okay? Last set of examples. Let's consider this time composition of trigonometric and inverse trigonometric functions that are not the inverse of each other. So for number 8, let's consider the tangent of cosine inverse of 2 over 3. How can we deal with this? First and foremost, maybe we can make things simpler by looking at the thing inside first. So let's look at that one first. We can let alpha to be equal to cosine inverse of 2 over 3. And what do we know about this one? 2 over 3 is inside the domain of cosine inverse. So recall, domain of cosine inverse equals -1 to 1. So since this one is in the domain of cosine inverse, we get here, by applying the cosine function to both sides, you have cosine alpha equals cosine of cosine inverse of 2/3. This is inside domain of cosine inverse, so you just get here 2/3. And obviously, this one is not a special value. So if you recall, the special values are 0, 1/2, plus minus 1/2 rather, plus minus square root of 2 over 2, plus minus square root of 3 over 2, and plus minus 1. So this one right here is not a special value. However, what did we do? Basically, we changed this one into alpha. So we changed that one into alpha. So we get right here that tangent of cosine inverse of 2 over 3 is just tangent alpha. And luckily, you have right here cosine alpha. And if you can recall from what we did in the previous units, given one trigonometric function and some interval containing your alpha, you can clearly determine all the remaining trigonometric functions. So what we'll do right now is, using cosine alpha, we will look for tangent alpha. So let's do that one. First, take note that alpha should be inside the range of your cosine inverse. So why range? Take note, alpha is inside the cosine function. So we need to make sure that alpha is in the domain of the restricted cosine function, which is the range of cosine inverse. So note that alpha is in range of cosine inverse, which is, what's the range of cosine inverse? That's 0 to pi. So basically, we are looking, so goal is to find tangent alpha given cosine alpha equals 2 over 3 and alpha in 0 to pi. How do we do this right here? First, let's look at the given. We know that alpha is in 0 to pi. So alpha is in 0 to pi, and so we are looking at quadrants 1 and 2. And observe, cosine of alpha is greater than 0. So that means, since cosine of alpha is greater than 0, and your cosine of alpha corresponds to x coordinates, that means we are considering quadrant 1. So P of alpha is in quadrant 1. And so that means sine alpha is greater than 0, cosine of alpha is greater than 0, and so your tangent alpha, which is just sine over cosine, should also be greater than 0. Now, we can proceed in two ways. First, we can either use the x, y, r definitions, or we can use identities. So let's do the first one for for the first one, take note that cosine alpha equals x over r. I should put that in the other side, equals x over r. But similarly, cosine alpha equals 2 over 3. So for simplicity, we can let x to be equal to 2 and r to be equal to 3, so that we can use the equation x squared plus y squared equals r squared and solve for y. So plugging 2 and 3 here, you'll get 2 squared, which is 4, plus y squared equals 3 squared equals 9. And so y squared equals 5, giving us y equals plus minus square root of 5. However, what did we say? We said that we are in quadrant 1, so the y value is always positive. So y value is always positive. That means we're taking the positive square root of 5. Then now we can find tangent alpha. Recall tangent alpha is just y over x. So you have positive square root of 5 over your x, which is 2. So you have here tangent of alpha, which is cosine inverse of 2 over 3 equals square root of 5 over 2. So that's the technique when you're using the x, y, r definitions. You just look for x, y, and r. But if you want to use identities, take note you are looking for tangent. So usually we don't really want to use tangent alpha equals sine alpha over cosine alpha. Why? You're only given cosine alpha and you don't know anything about sine alpha. So if you will use that equation, you have two unknowns. Instead, we can resort to your Pythagorean identity. 1 plus tangent squared alpha equals secant squared alpha. And take note, secant squared alpha is just 1 over cosine squared alpha. So let's use this one. We get 1 plus tan squared alpha equals, so what's 1 over cosine alpha? You have 2/3. So you have 1 over 2/3 squared, giving us 1 plus tangent squared alpha equals, what can we do with exponents and fractions? You can distribute your exponents over the fraction. So you have here 1 over 2 squared equals 4, and 3 squared is 9. And 1 over 4 over 9, that's just obtaining the reciprocal of 4 over 9, which is 9 over 4. And so you get tan squared alpha equals 9 over 4 minus 1, which is just 5 over 4. Then obtaining the square root of both sides, you have tangent alpha equals plus minus square root of 5 over 4. And take note, the square root can be distributed in the numerator and denominator. So you have plus minus square root of 5 over square root of 4, which is 2. And since we said that tangent alpha is greater than 0, we have that tangent of alpha, or tangent of cosine inverse of 2/3, is just positive square root of 5 over 2. I hope this example is clear. So let's have another one. Let's consider number 11. For number 11, you have cosine of arc sine of negative 3/5. First, let's check if negative 3/5 is in the domain of sine inverse. Recall, domain of sine inverse is negative 1 to 1, and negative 3/5 is inside this one. So negative 3 over 5 is in the domain of arc sine. And so, we can let alpha to be equal to arc sine of negative 3/5 and applying sine function, we get here sine alpha equals sine of arc sine of negative 3/5. Since negative 3/5 is in the domain of arc sine, this one right here is just negative 3 over 5. Now, let's look at the original given. You have cosine of arc sine of negative 3/5, but arc sine of negative 3/5 is just alpha. So you have right here cosine of alpha. And so our goal is to find cosine alpha given sine alpha equals negative 3/5, and take note what's the alpha that we are considering right now. What we are considering as values of alpha are the ones we want alpha to be in the domain of your restricted cosine, which is the range of cosine inverse. So you want alpha to be in, sorry, I made the mistake here. Take note, this is your alpha. So you want alpha to be in the domain of your restricted sine, which is the range of sine inverse, which is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So you want alpha to be in negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. In this case, what are we looking at? Your alpha is given such that it sweeps or it covers quadrants 4 and 1. So you have quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. Furthermore, you're given a value of sine which is negative. So you're considering y values which are less than 0. And so we are considering P of alpha to be in quadrant 4. The alpha in quadrant 4. And what do we know here? We know that if you're right here, sine alpha is less than 0, and cosine alpha, which corresponds to the x coordinates, should be positive. So let's solve for this one. I guess I want to use identities. So what's an identity relating the sine and cosine function? We have using the Pythagorean identity, the Pythagorean identity, we have here sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha equals 1. And so we will just solve for cosine alpha here. First, let's plug sine alpha. You have negative 3 over 5 squared plus cosine squared alpha equals 1, giving us cosine squared alpha equals 1 minus negative 3 over 5 squared, which is just 9 over 25. So minus 9 over 25, giving us cosine squared alpha equals 16 over 25. And now, obtaining the square root of both sides, you have cosine alpha equals plus minus square root of 16 over 25, which is, by distributing the square root in the numerator and denominator, we obtain plus minus 4 over 5. However, what did we say? We said that cosine alpha is greater than 0. And so we are taking cosine of alpha, which is cosine of alpha is arcsine of negative 3/5 to be the positive 4 over 5. Okay? One last example. This one right here is a little bit different from what we are doing. So for number 12, we are looking for cotangent of arc cos of 3x, where x is in between 0 and 1/3. So first, we have to make sure that the one inside is in the domain of arc cos. So take note, we are given that 0 is less than or equal to x, less than 1/3. And so multiplying both sides by 3, we get 0 less than or equal to 3x less than 1. And what's the domain of your arc cos? The domain of your arc cos is negative 1 to 1. And all the values of 3x are inside that interval. So we have shown that 3x is inside the domain of arc cosine. And so we can let alpha to be equal to arc cosine of 3x. So that, applying the cosine function to both sides, we get cosine alpha equals cosine of arc cosine of 3x, which is just 3x, since 3x is in the domain of arc cosine. Now, what are we looking for? We are looking for cotangent of arc cos 3x, which we said is alpha. So we are looking for cotangent alpha. Find cotangent alpha given cosine of alpha equals 3x, and we want alpha to be in the restricted domain of cosine, which is the range of cosine inverse, which is 0 to pi. So we want alpha to be in 0 to pi. Okay. Now let's see if your alpha is in 0 to pi, we are looking at quadrants 1 and 2. Okay? And furthermore, what did we say about 3x? 3x is greater than or equal to 0. So 3x is not negative. So this one right here, 3x is greater than or equal to 0. Cosine of alpha is greater than or equal to 0. And take note, cosine alpha corresponds to the x-coordinates. So that means we are considering the point P of alpha, which is in quadrant 1. Now what we are looking for is cotangent alpha, which is cosine alpha over sine alpha. And for this one, what I want to use, since we use the identities here, let's try and use x, y, and r definitions so that we can practice furthermore. So take note, your cosine of alpha, which is 3x, is just the same as x over r. But since we already use the variable x here, I don't want to use x to the other side. So instead, I'll call it x bar over r bar. So this one right here is just for the sake of me not using 3x again. So since, or should I say, just to differentiate between x and x bar. And take note, 3x is just the same as 3x over 1. So for simplicity, we can take x bar to be equal to 3x and r bar equals 1. So let's find for our y bar. Take note that x bar squared plus y bar squared equals r bar squared. And plugging the values for x bar and r bar, we have here 3x quantity squared plus y bar squared equals 1 squared. Then further simplifying, we have 9x squared plus y bar squared equals 1. And solving for y bar squared, we get y bar squared equals, transferring this one to the right side, we get 1 minus 9x squared. And obtaining the square root of both sides, we have y bar equals plus minus square root of 1 minus 9x squared. Now, which value of y bar will we be taking? Take note, we are considering quadrant 1. So that means the y values are not negative. So since quadrant 1, that means y bar is the positive square root of 1 minus 9x squared. And so, we can now look for cotangent alpha. So, cotangent alpha equals, so by definition, this is just your x bar over y bar. Your x bar is 3x, and your y bar is the square root of 1 minus 9x squared. And going back to the first step that we did, alpha is arc cos of 3x, and so we have cotangent of arc cos of 3x equals 3x over the square root of 1 minus 9x squared. Okay? And that ends our discussion for today. If you have any questions, you can contact me in messenger chat or through email. And take note that your exam will be on May 30, I think. Is it May 30? Yeah, it's May 30. So you still have 9 days from now before your fourth exam. So thank you and hope to see you in person in the next lesson. So thank you everyone.